Hello and welcome to a very special award-heavy episode of Filmcast Without a Cause. I'm Jacob Rosdale.
I'm Patrick Boberg. We won some awards?
No, we didn't win any awards. But,
darn it.
This weekend, the Academy Awards happened. A bunch of other awards actually happened too. So we're going to use this opening news segment we usually do to not go into depth about any of the award shows, but kind of just purge awards from our system so we don't have to talk about them again for another 10 months or so. Again, we're not going to be talking about every awards or every winner or every loser. So if there's something you specifically want us to give our opinion about, you're going to have to contact us through the FWOC means of communication, which are, Pat.
Yeah, if you want to tell us that we're completely wrong with our opinions, there's Filmcast WOAC. That's our Twitter handle, and it's also our email handle. It's filmcastwoac@gmail.com. All that stuff is on filmcastwithoutacause.com.
Well, and we probably shouldn't belay the point any longer. We should talk about the main award show of the weekend.
Oscars.
The Oscars. Pat, I feel the need to apologize because I don't know. Would you have watched the Oscars if we weren't talking about it on the show? Is it something you watch every year?
I've watched it every year since I think Forrest Gump took it home. So I've seen it for a long time. Why? Did you not think I was going to?
No, I didn't know. I knew for me it was a tradition to watch it. I can't remember the first. I think I saw The English Patient was the first year I started watching. So probably after you. You've probably been watching them longer than me.
Well, I just remember watching it at my first house in Iowa with a little handheld TV after my parents told me to go to bed.
Well, I felt bad regardless, thinking like, oh my God, is Pat having to watch this? Talking about the actual show.
No, like, don't you remember when you last couple of years when you lived in Iowa, we had those Oscar special, pool viewings. So no, I'm all about it.
Okay, good. Just making sure that I didn't that wasn't on my head. We'll probably talk a little bit about the show in general in a little bit, but the big winner, or at least I don't know if there really was a big winner for the entire show, but the one who won the best picture was Argo, which everyone predicted.
Yeah.
But I think actually the main categories pretty much went where everyone thought they would, with the exception of maybe Best Director.
Yes.
Ang Lee, which I actually thought was a pleasant surprise.
So do I. After it was picked, I was like, man, he definitely did have a lot of work to bring that thing in and make it, the unfilmable story viewable.
And it occurred
and
like
really good too.
And for a split second, in my mind, I was like, well, it also won Best Cinematography and Best Visual Effects. I was like, maybe there's an outside chance that Life of Pi is going to win Best Picture when it came to that. But alas, it did not. And Ang Lee again wins Best Director without winning Best Picture. That happened again, I think, in 2000. I think he won for Crouching Tiger.
He won Director for Brokeback.
Oh, for Brokeback. And what did he lose? I mean, what won Best Picture that year?
Crash. That's the thing. Everybody thought he had been snubbed for Brokeback, but he won Director and the film lost. That was the big snub.
Oh, in my mind, for some reason, it was Crouching Tiger, and he lost to Chicago. But those years don't even match up. So, yeah, I'm glad you did your fact-checking, because I didn't. But, yeah, he still got a standing O. And Lincoln didn't go home empty-handed. Daniel Day-Lewis won Best Actor, giving a speech, which I think was probably my favorite of the night. Probably the most I've laughed. I laughed at the show, even.
Yeah, when you take home 3 of those things, you got to figure by the third time you're up there, you thank your wife, you thank the director, and you make a few jokes.
Yeah, and what was so great about it is, I guess in my mind, Daniel Day-Lewis, I don't think does a lot of interviews or whatever. So in my mind, I just pictured him as self-serious, as taking himself too seriously.
Yes, because he always plays the serious guy.
So I think I bundled him in with Tommy Lee Jones and Joaquin Phoenix and maybe even Bobby De Niro. Doesn't want to really, be introspective or whatever. But he cracked some good jokes, thanked his wife in a really sweet way, talked about how his method, how she has to stay with all these strange men.
I had to explain that to my wife, Marita, and because she didn't know what it was. But the funny thing is, if you think about it, if he is in character the entire time they're filming, that would be just like horrific during Gangs of New York or, impossible to live with during My Left Foot.
Or There Will Be Blood, where he's this really bombastic character.
Megalomaniac, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just found out this story today. Jared Harris is in Lincoln, and he's also on the show Mad Men. And apparently, Daniel Day-Lewis would talk to Jared Harris about Mad Men while in Lincoln character.
Amazing.
Doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm like, I wish he would have like gotten out his phone and recorded that or something.
That is amazing.
But
that reminds me, not to get to the show aspect of it, but when Seth MacFarlane was making the jokes about Lincoln seeing things and being like, "What is this cell phone?" So.
Oh my! Did you laugh at that? What do you think? Let's move on a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, we can talk about the winners, but what did you think about MacFarlane as host?
It was okay. During the meat of the show, I thought he was funnier and easier to take than the beginning. I thought that whole setup was pretty lame. And while I was joking at points during the first song, the "Saw Your Boobs" song, for not wanting to change it to be a jerk, that's a pretty misogynistic, terrible song.
Most of the jokes I found were not. I mean, I think the main target were females, and like there were a lot of. I don't even want to call them subtle weight jokes, but they were like anti-weight jokes that were like he made a Rex Reed joke. Rex Reed famously was mean about Melissa McCarthy in Identity Thief, talking about her figure, and MacFarlane makes a Rex Reed joke regarding Adele, which is suggesting that Adele is a large woman. So he was trying to be offensive, but also being like, but I'm not that guy. I don't know. There were times I did laugh at MacFarlane. I lost it a little bit too much at the Von Trapp family singer gag, which seemed just ripped out of Family Guy, but I laughed pretty hard at that. But for the most part, I think the whole show had kind of an air of flop sweat about it. It seemed drenched in it. Like he felt he wasn't doing good, and he kept laughing and making fun of that fact. And it was just drawing attention that the other aspects of the show, some of the musical performances, or the fact that they kept bringing out the cast of Chicago like it's the most loved film of all time.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. For me, it may have been one of the worst. I think I had more fun watching the Franco Hathaway train wreck than last night's show.
Oh, I would disagree. I think that's the bottom, followed by David Letterman, and then maybe this.
Oprah Uma.
Oh man. Or hey, want to buy a monkey?
The other highlight I wanted to, I as far as it as a spectacle, my favorite part of the show was probably Shirley Bassey performing during the Bond tribute.
Yes, that was better than Adele. I thought that was amazing.
My main disappointment was, like, I knew they were doing this Bond thing and it was top secret. I was really hoping they were going to bring out all the Bonds to introduce Adele or something like that.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So
yeah, I thought that the cut together scenes of the movies over 50 years was kind of just a throwaway time killer.
Yeah, and usually, like, one of my favorite things about the Oscars are the montages that go on too long, like the celebration of movies, and that was like the only one really, and it was like there was too many shots of Halle Berry, and a lot to remind you that the films are of varying quality. So it didn't make me want to go out and buy that Bond box set that I'm sure Eon Productions was hoping it would.
Well, we kind of skipped over the awards, but were there anything, just quickly, your overall take, and where were you surprised?
Ang Lee was the big surprise. I was disappointed that Hathaway didn't have a better speech, because I think she's been the de facto winner for a long time, and she's obviously wanted it for so long, and I guess I shouldn't be disappointed that she didn't give a great speech, but it was, a letdown. Jennifer Lawrence, who I don't think probably deserves the award, it's still nice to see her win, so there's no longer that anticipation of when is Jennifer Lawrence going to win.
She's 22.
I know she's young. I mean, that's the thing, but we don't have that weight that I think we had with Anne Hathaway.
Oh, okay.
And we had with Michelle. I don't think Michelle Williams has won yet, and so there's that. So I was just like, get it out of the way so we no longer have to be like, well, maybe she's due this year as, the young ingenue, or the thing we still have with Michelle Williams and Carey Mulligan is like, well, it'll be her time eventually. We don't have to worry about that. I don't think it wasn't my favorite performance of the year. And actually that was the Oscar clip that made me go, she was maybe a little broad when they showed the clips again.
Mm-hmm. I was actually kind of surprised by a lot of things, especially in
really?
Like the original and adapted that Django Unchained took it. This was obviously a lot of people voted. The politics and the campaigning got to them, and Zero Dark 30 only took home one award for sound editing. It didn't,
and it was tied.
Yeah, and it didn't win just overall editing. It didn't win original story. It didn't obviously win actress, and it wasn't even nominated for director. So there was a lot of surprises. At least I thought, even in animated, I didn't think Brave deserved it at all. It seemed like
Yeah,
maybe
that was
people
more of
voted because they're like, oh, I haven't seen any of these, but Pixar makes good stuff.
Yeah, that was more my I don't know. Brave wasn't my favorite, but it was kind of. I don't know if it was a surprise. It was more of a, oh, they're just gonna give it to Pixar again.
Well, I'm glad that we don't do a this year's Oscar picks, because to me that this is the year that is more than any in my life that it's blatantly public that there's campaigning and trinkets sent to people who vote, and people take into account public opinion. It's, as we'll talk about later in our special segment, 30 years down the line, no one's going to care about anything other than the film.
Yeah, exactly, and we will talk about that later in the show. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Should we move on from the Oscars and talk about something a little more indie?
I guess we can call it indie, but the Independent Spirit Awards?
In quotes. Well, they're independent in spirit, anyway.
Nice. Very nice.
Because a lot of my Twitter feed, the awards for the Independent Spirit Awards were Saturday. A lot of my Twitter feed was filled with kind of people nitpicking the Independent Spirit Awards because the big winner was the Silver Linings Playbook. I think it won Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Picture. And typically, I don't know if you knew this about the Independent Spirit Awards. I didn't until my Twitter feed told me. The guideline is it has to be $20 million or below to qualify for the Independent Spirit Awards. And Silver Linings was a $21 million film. And obviously backed by the Weinsteins and starring big movie stars. So a lot of people were throwing into question, like, what are these awards for? But I don't know, $21 million in the grand scheme of things, or $1 million, I don't know if it's that big of a difference. But it was good to see that movie. I'm not as big of a fan as I know other people are, but it's good to hear that David O. Russell, years after breaking through at the Independent Spirit Awards, was recognized again.
Yeah, I have a problem with the budget and that type of thing, but also I don't like it when movies are lauded, especially in independent ways, when the cast is all faces. You've got Robert De Niro in this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not independent if it's got $21 million in Robert De Niro, unless for some reason you're a kid making a movie and Robert De Niro's your third uncle and he just happens to throw you a bone. But I don't think that's ever happened. But I don't see how this is truly an independent film. And that's kind of like my same nitpick with the Oscars. It's like I prefer a film festival setting where the winner is picked at Cannes or at Sundance or at Toronto, because then it's like just what happens in the audience at the time, and people make authentic votes. Whereas here, it's Silver Linings Playbook is running laps around these movies when it comes to what we just talked about, the star power of the Oscars and the known director. If we're going to say one of these is truly independent, it's really funny that they kept saying that Beasts of the Southern Wild was made for no money, even though it was made with like $1.5 million.
Yeah. So. Well, even when we talked about the nominations and we talked about what best in our minds is an independent film or has the independent spirit, we said Beasts of the Southern Wild should take this in a walk. But obviously, I think it only won Best Cinematography.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Independent Spirit Award's a little disappointing. I'm glad Matthew McConaughey won something after being, having such a good year last year. He won Best Supporting Actor for Magic Mike. But we don't have to dwell too much on that. We weren't there at the show. Oh, and the documentary for Independent Spirit Awards, The Invisible War, won, which I think it should have gotten the Oscar over Searching for Sugar Man. So.
I haven't seen it, so I was going to ask you if you were happy with that take home or not.
Not a big fan. It's a fine movie, and the problem is it's also a feel good. Like, you leave it feeling good about yourself, where all the other films are a little serious and not a little serious.
They're take action
War.
Movies.
Yeah, and I talked about how the Invisible War literally made me angry. So if that gets that emotional response, I didn't really feel much during Searching for Sugar Man. So that was my big disappointment. But I'm less disappointed with the final awards that we're going to be talking about this week, the Razzies, which another film swept those. That would be the Twilight Saga, Breaking Dawn Part 2, which I have not seen.
It looks like they took all but 3 awards.
Yes, it won Worst Picture, Worst Actress, Worst Supporting Actor, Taylor Lautner, Worst Screen Couple, that's Taylor Lautner and I believe a 12-year-old, Mackenzie Foy.
Oh my!
No. And Worst Director and Worst Screen Ensemble. But That's My Boy didn't go home empty-handed. Worst Screenplay and Worst Actor, Adam Sandler And worst supporting actress, Rihanna in Battleship, which I can't argue with. She is pretty much a... Well, I think that might be picking on her just because she's famous and trying to act. She didn't really have much to do in Battleship. But we don't need to spend much time on the Razzies. We talked about them when the nominations go out. They're mainly just... It's kind of that snark culture just to tear down what's popular. Or
in this case, what was expected to be tentpole films, but disasters, I guess, in some respects.
And with Battleship, for sure. Low-hanging fruit. Well, we filled enough time talking about awards. Maybe we should talk about some movie news like we usually do in this category. An article I saw last week mentioned in the LA Times talking about how the movie studios were upset that theater chains were asking money to play specific trailers. And I don't know about you, Pat, but this is something I knew absolutely nothing about.
No, I had no idea. And to think about it in the opposite angle, I always thought that was part of the way they made some money, is that they were being paid to put them, because it's not the same trailer on every film.
Well, I know from my very limited time working at a movie theater or volunteering, I never really got paid. I just wanted to see how the sausage was made. All the trailers, at least with celluloid film projection, all the trailers came in little mini cans, and it was up to the projectionist to just slap them on. And I don't know if the person I was working with was getting paid, but he seemed to just say willy-nilly, I'm like, oh, this Tower Heist trailer is 3.5 minutes. I don't want to waste my people's time. I'll put on this 30-second teaser for this instead. But it makes sense now. I go to the movies, I see half an hour's worth of previews. I see the same movie trailer over and over and over from the same studio. It's beginning to, come together in my mind why I see so many ads for movies.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is, in this LA Times article, they say several times that, like, throughout history, this was the way for theaters to advertise, to get people in the seats. And now it's pretty much probably the exact opposite. These movies, they don't necessarily sell themselves, but there's so many other places for the media of these movies to get out on the internet. You see them on buses, on billboards, on the radio. Even sometimes you hear commercials. So, trailers and things like that. So I kind of feel like the execs are kind of having to deal with reality. This is the bedrock of advertising. It's the studio's priority to market a product, not the retailers.
And to clarify what the LA Times says, it says these are mainly 4 studios: 20th Century Fox, Sony Pictures, Universal Pictures, and Warner Brothers. That they have reportedly made deals with theater chains like Regal and AMC. Other studios like Disney and Paramount did not comment for it. And the article also goes on to say that theater chains, I also knew this, that with the print of a movie, they would usually slap on a trailer. It was part of the deal. If you're getting this movie, this trailer is onto the hard reel. But theater chains are supposedly locking down on that and limiting the amount you can put with the actual film.
Because it used to be 2, and now they're only allowing 1 locked in.
Yeah, 1 free trailer only. So I didn't know there was some money under... I don't know if it's really under the table, or cashola, whatever. But it makes sense. It's just one of those aspects of being a movie goer that you never really think about until it shows up in an article like this. So good job, LA Times. Well, let's shift topics back to the Academy Awards and discuss one of the big winners from last night, Mikhail Haneke's Amour.
Maman? Tout à l'heure, quand je suis entrée, je me suis rappelé comment je vous écoutais toujours faire l'amour quand j'étais petite. Ça me donnait le sentiment que vous vous aimiez et qu'on resterait toujours ensemble.
After suffering a stroke paralyzing half of her body, Parisian retiree Anne slowly loses command of her body as her husband cares for her.
Non mais dis-moi, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? T'es devenu fou?
Assieds-toi.
Non mais je veux pas m'asseoir. Qu'est-ce qui se passe ici?
All too often in film reviews, movies are discussed in reference to the directors, actors, and screenwriters who produce the cinematic work. With Amour, only the most ardent of American cinephiles know the names of Amour's leading actresses, Emmanuelle Riva and director Mikhail Haneke. Personally, this is my favorite thing about foreign cinema, seeing a film and knowing little to nothing about the movie before you. As I said, I know nothing about Ms. Riva other than the fact that she's 85 and she is the oldest woman to ever be nominated for an Academy Award. And Haneke is the twisted mind that brought us the 2007 remake of his own film, Funny Games. Amour is a stripped-down, no-tricks story of a couple at the end of their lives dealing with what that entails. So Jacob, while I'm sure we'll somehow discuss Mr. Haneke, I want to know your personal reaction to a movie that gives its audience nothing more than the story we'll all one day live through, death.
Oh yeah, well, that's actually a surprisingly difficult question to answer. Just what was my reaction to the film? Because my reaction changed through the course of watching it, as well as the time between seeing it and talking with you now, because this was not not that movies need to be a pleasant experience, and not that movies need to entertain you, or not that you have to be comfortable while watching a movie, because you don't get any of that with Amour, which is as realist of a film as it gets. It puts you there in that room with this couple or their loft, and you do not get to leave, and you get a slight reprieve in the beginning, but you are in that apartment. And while watching it, and I knew what I was getting into, having seen other Haneke films, but it really wears on you. And by the time the film ended, I was ready to get out of the theater, and I did not want... It's a one-timer, definitely. And I think I was actually almost a little physically mad at
really?
the film. Well, no, and it's just a weird emotion, because and it's not I was going to say I didn't like it but I admired it, but admiration at the point when I immediately left the theater is probably too strong of a word, because admire still reflects positive feelings, and I was just so emotionally affected by it that I was going through a series of conflicting emotions. And but as time goes on and you get the distance from it, because it is a 2-hour movie essentially only about death, and I don't deal with death, getting personal, I don't deal with death very well. I just recently had a death in my family. So I was going through some weird coping with it. But, between seeing it and between the Academy Awards and between today, I really came to get to that word I was avoiding earlier, and appreciating it and thinking it is the most interesting film that was on the Best Picture, that was nominated for Best Picture this year, and it's the one that made me really think the most about what it was trying to say. I don't know. I've talked a lot, and I don't know if I've really said that much.
No, I was very interesting what you said, and I can't generally derive. You do appreciate it, but does that mean that you enjoyed it?
No. But I think it's a really good film.
Okay.
That's the thing. I think it's a really good film. It's real powerful is the word I want to use more than good or bad.
Yes.
I don't know, Pat, I'm sure we have fans who have followed us from our last job, but in our last job, we had to talk about a film for 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes usually, and then say whether or not it was worth the price of admission. We had to get reductive to that point, and I have no idea what we would have to do, what I would do if I was tasked with reviewing Amour and saying whether or not it was worth the price of admission, because there's only a certain amount of people I would recommend this film to.
Yes.
And I don't know if I recommend seeing it, when it's on DVD. It's almost like, to get that whole experience, you need to be in a theater. You need to be not forced to watch it. But
yeah, there's no distractions. There's no way you can pause it.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think it won't make my best of the year list, because it just didn't have that X factor. I don't know. It's still too hard to say. Maybe with enough time removed, I'll come around to it. But I don't think I liked it. I do think it's a really good film, and if it would have had been a surprise best winner, I found so many of the nominees this year to be safe, and that's why I was angry that The Master wasn't nominated. But now that Amour was up there, it makes me wonder why The Master didn't again, because Amour had to have been just as divisive. But it's at least something interesting that was up, for the big award. Pat, you give some of your opinion. What was your experience like? I've talked nearly more than enough.
It's interesting. I know my opinion. I wanted to know yours, and I think it was an amazing film. I really, really like this movie, but I think that's part of what I'm drawn to, the movies that connect with me more than anything else, are the ones that are just pure slice of life. True, there are no tricks, no like I said, this movie didn't even have a score. The only music you hear in it, this means there's no manipulation of like suddenly there's this swell and you're going to hear a little bit of a soliloquy or something where they're just, vamping to the camera and giving you their Oscar moment. The Oscar moments in this movie for Ms. Riva are really just, her being a person who's dying. And it's pretty incredible when the film's over to think of, an 84 or 83, however old she was when she did this film, to put herself through that is pretty incredible. And, like movies like this, it's definitely a one-timer, and it's dark, but not in the way that maybe like a Lars Van Trier movie is, where it's disturbingly dark. It's realistically dark. This is, like I posed to you, this is something we're all going to have to go through, and maybe people don't want to watch that, but they maybe not this exact situation, but it's still really hard. It made me think of films such as like I don't know Mr. Haneke, but like 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, or Love Liza. Or maybe on the other end of, an enjoyable film, Happy Go Lucky, or my favorite slice of life film, and justifiably so by probably many people, but Kramer versus Kramer, where the stakes are just so realistic and they don't ever make a trick of doing something that would make it easier to deal with. And I don't know any other Haneke films. I haven't even seen Funny Games all the way through, even though I referenced it, to know what he's doing and what he's doing in the past that plays into this. But I thought out of the films that were nominated this year for the Oscars, after seeing it, which was only this weekend, so it's the most fresh in my mind, that I actually found myself pulling for this film really strongly, like as a the
real dark horse.
Yeah, the impossible pick. I mean, what was it, about 12 years ago when Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, everybody thought that movie had a legitimate shot at winning. And I think this movie didn't have a legitimate shot. Maybe the 10% who voted to nominate it are the only voters in the entire Academy who actually ended up seeing it. But it's pretty incredible, at least on a connected level. But I tend to see a movie where it's a slice of life like this and just take myself and think, what does this mean in terms of not generally just the characters in the film, but just what they're trying to convey about life in general, and what you're trying to see there. Because there's not suddenly a fight scene or, the building's not on fire that makes the situation distinct to the person and the people in the movie. I mean, she's a piano playing tutor, or maybe a professor of some sort of piano player, but that's even though that's her little characteristic that makes her special in the film, the subject matter is just so cathartic's not the right word, but it just brings you in and you feel it, and you know that, man, I know people who have had this type of horrible end to their life or have wanted to do something about it in a negative or positive way when they come to the end, such as what happens in this film. And it really grabs you. And I thought that was the power of the film. And as it took me about an hour and a half before I realized there was no score in it. And generally, if I notice that in a movie, it's negative. It's a bad thing. It's like there's something not there grabbing your attention. But this really worked to its benefit. Did you notice that during the viewing?
Yeah, there's no camera. There's no fancy camera movements. I think the camera pans once, maybe twice. There's like, you didn't even know what her real role as a piano player was, so that just goes to show, there's no real plot, or there's no real exposition. The things people say to each other are things they would actually say because they know each other. They don't need to say, "Oh, well, you taught me how to play this and that and that and that." So the emphasis in the film is on the performances. That's what carries the film. Riva, you talked about, I don't know how to say the male character's name. It's French, Trintignant or something. Jean-Louis.
We'll just call him his character name, George.
George, yeah, but he's excellent as well. And there's just these moments of quiet awkwardness where a character will leave a room and the other character will just be sitting there quietly for a minute or two. Mm-hmm. It's something that won't be for everyone, like I said. But
there were several times, too, where the camera just sat, like early in the film, where it just sat and let the action play out like a play. And similar to a lot of movies that are, a slice of life story like this, this is basically a play on celluloid or digital film, however it was made. And it made me think of another movie we talked about coming out this year called August Osage County, which if this is a downer, that movie is going to be just as much of a downer. I guess there's not the death angle like this, but it's really interesting every once in a while where there's a successful play style film like this.
Mm-hmm. And I'd seen more of Haneke's films. I'd seen Funny Games and Cachet, which are both sort of thrillers that are about the inside world versus the outside world. And they don't play out like thrillers. They play out very much like they would in real life, where there's so much Well, Funny Games it's different than Cachet in that it's playing more on how Americans or movie goers in general like to see violence on screen, and the film chides you for that. And a lot of people have negative feelings towards Haneke, and I kind of was in that for the provocateur, raconteurness of it, how he, is perpetrating the crime, but then also calling us out on it. So I, for a while, had bundled them together in Von Trier as these provocateurs I was intrigued by, but didn't really respect that much. And this film kind of turned it around on me. Again, it's not a film I'm going to easily recommend.
I was just going to say, is this, being a one-timer film, is this even a film that you can recommend on any level?
It's, I mean, if you have listened to this conversation and listened to the struggles I have had, or at least how I tried to articulate it, talking about this film, and it still sounds interesting to you, you should see it.
Yes. If you know the person, you have to think subjectively about, can this person handle, or will they be upset with me for saying, yeah, see it?
So I'm not going to say whether or not it's worth the price of admission or the price of a rental. If you're someone who needs to see every Best Picture nominee, you're going to see it. I probably actually was going to skip this film if you hadn't recommended or suggested we see it last week, just because my feelings towards Haneke and knowing what the film was about. But I don't regret seeing it by any means. It just took a little distance for me to come to terms with how I felt about it. How about you? Would you recommend it?
Oh, I couldn't just blindly recommend it. I'd have to know the person's cinematic interests, like if they want to see all the best movies or if they're into foreign films. And also, possibly, I might ask them if they've had anyone really close in their life die, because I could never recommend this to like my mom, if or somebody who's a little older and has lost a parent. It's pretty at that point, just like almost like watching Hostel or something.
If you watch the Oscar clip where he is force feeding her water and said, that movie's for me, then see it. Amour is rated PG-13 for mature thematic material, including a disturbing act and for brief language. Ooh, what could that act be? When we come back, we'll talk about what's new on DVD, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about the Oscars, but maybe not how you think. Keep listening. New on DVD this week, the week of February 26th. Chasing Mavericks, the surfing movie starring Gerard Butler. Holy Motors, a film I'm dying to see.
I know, I want to see that pronto.
A French film I don't know much about. It's just supposedly wackadoo. I don't know if it'll be in red boxes. I have a suspicion, and don't hate me, listeners, if this doesn't come true, that it will show up on Netflix Instant, because the distributing company is also the ones that did The Imposter, and that's now on Netflix Instant. So I'm probably just going to hedge my bet and wait 3 or so weeks before I try and track down a DVD of Holy Motors.
That'll maybe be we'll have just a special little segment about what did we just watch.
That would be awesome. That would be great. Watch this space. Also coming out, The Master, my best picture of the year. Well, no, I wouldn't say that. No, scratch that. The Master, my choice to win. I was hoping it would win in write-in votes for best picture.
Can you do that?
I don't know. I know people were joking that movie 48 or 43 should have had a write-in campaign. That was just Nathan Rabin on the AV Club.
Well, seeing the clips in the Oscars and just hearing some recent chatter about the movie, like having conversations, I really want to see that movie again.
Yeah, it was funny thing with the Oscars is when you see the clips, and if you've seen the movies, you'll be like, oh, I was judging, like my perception of the films were changing just by the clips. I'm like, maybe I didn't like that film as much as I did when talking about it on the podcast over time. Oh, we'll get into that later. A couple other films. Silent Hill Revelation is coming to DVD, and This Is Not a Film, which is a kind of sort of documentary featuring Iranian director Jafar Panahi. He did Offside, the soccer movie about a young woman who sneaks into a soccer game. Panahi apparently said some things wrong about the Iranian government in 2009 that they didn't like, and so he's been in house arrest.
Is he still in house arrest?
I think he is.
Oh, yeah, because I think I read something that he just upset them again.
Yeah, he was serving a 6-year prison sentence, and he was told he cannot make another film for 20 years. And so he made this film called This Is Not a Film in his house, and he smuggled it out in a cake on a USB drive. and it played some film festivals this year, and now it's out on DVD, and it sounds pretty interesting. I hoping that one shows up in somewhere I can see it, Redbox or on Netflix Instant. Pat, did you check out anything at the Redbox or on Netflix Instant this weekend?
Not the Redbox, but I did have on Netflix Instant on this past Friday in Iowa. There was the snowstorm that wasn't. And I brought home my work, and I just emailed and said, well, I might as well just work from home. I can do everything I wanted to do here. So I was editing a bunch of video, and in the background, I was just had on for noise because it was my house, and I was worried an axe murderer might come in. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, followed by Trading Places, two 80s favorites that I hadn't seen in forever. But I don't know what I could go on to say anything more about that other than those two movies are on, and they're still just as good as I remember. And I got some fun, exciting news, and that is that my professional development form or plan to go to a conference for work has been approved, and I'm going to the National Association of Broadcasters conference for the second time in my career in April. And when I went there 2 years ago, I got to see Kevin Smith talk about Red State and his production workflow and things like that. We're using Avid, so hopefully something that cool will happen again, and I can talk about it, or maybe I can just talk about how upset I am that they come out with, I don't know, Final Cut Pro XX or something.
Double X. Oh my gosh, that would be horrible. As someone who has never seen Trading Places,
never. Does
it only stand up because of nostalgia, or is it a legitimately funny movie?
There's some funny parts in it. That movie really made me remember how awesome Eddie Murphy can be. But there was a scene that I completely forgot about in the end where they're all dressing up and they're trying to fool this guy. It's New Year's Eve, and Dan Aykroyd is in blackface. And,
oh my!
Yeah, and it's like every once in a while you hear about how horrible something is, or someone does blackface, or even Roger on Mad Men was in blackface, and they were still upset even if it was in the period and things like that. And it's like, well, and then here's Dan Aykroyd, and all of a sudden I just stopped editing for about 5 minutes. Like, this is preposterous. This is not okay. So don't rush out and see it. But if you're bored or tied down to a bed, maybe stream it.
Things I saw this week. You talked about it a little bit last week, and it kind of motivated me to go see it. Flight, and I'm glad I saw Flight because that's definitely one of the Oscar clips that spoiled the ending.
I was going to ask you. I was so upset when they spoiled almost every movie with their little clips. And when I saw that one, I turned to Marina. I said, "Oh, well, I hope Jacob got a chance to see this movie because they just told us everything about the end."
I did. I was angered by that. I get that that's the Oscar scene or whatever, but it's the climax of the film. Sorry to additionally spoil it by telling you, yep. I know it was in your mind while viewing it, people. That is a big spoiler in Flight. Good movie, though. I did enjoy it quite a bit.
What did you think about Denzel?
Denzel was good. And
are you a generally fan of his?
I like him more than you do. I know you've come down on him in the past. I'm not a big fan. I don't rush out to go see him in things, but no, it was good to see him really driven to give a good performance, and because he's someone who, like De Niro we've talked about, or Bruce Willis, who can really cash it in if he needs to.
I don't know if he's Bruce Willis bad, but
no, he's not Bruce Willis bad, not for sure. No. But and I also saw a film you loaned me when I saw you last, JCVD. Finally got around to watching that. Oddly has some parallels to Flight that I won't get into. But yeah, thanks for loaning that to me. That's a very fun, interesting movie. At least probably the most interesting film Jean-Claude Van Damme has ever made. Kind of a realist meta film about his public persona, and he gets involved in a robbery of sorts. And very interesting film.
Did it make you want to go visit Belgium?
I
don't know what I'm saying. I'm sorry.
Not as much as in Bruges did. And I also saw new on Netflix Instant Side by Side, which I mentioned when we talked about Sound City, the Dave Grohl documentary, that Keanu Reeves was producing a film where he was talking about the transition from chemical film to digital. And this is a very interesting film. He talks to all sorts of directors, like David Fincher. Every time he's in an interview, he just comes off as a guy I probably wouldn't want to work for, but just cool. He just gets angry and it curses, and I enjoy watching David Fincher in interviews. Talks to Soderbergh, talks to Scorsese, and if you are already a tech head and know how digital film works, you won't learn a lot, but it's cool to get these perspectives, or if you're someone who wants to know what's the difference between HD video and digital film, or chemical film and digital film, it's definitely an easy watch, and it's about an hour and a half, and it's on Netflix Instant. So I recommend Side by Side.
Is it better than Sound City? Because both of us kind of took that behind the woodshed.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'd say, better than Sound City because it's more focused and has an idea of what it wants to be. And Keanu's role is a lot more better defined than Dave Grohl's is in that film. And Keanu didn't direct this. I did find out in researching it why he was doing this. He is working on his directorial debut, which a man from Shang-Chi or something, some sort of kung fu film, which will hopefully be better than the RZA's directorial debut, which I also saw this weekend, Man with the Iron Fists. And that's where I'll leave it. I tweeted a little bit about that on our Twitter feed. Don't recommend it. But moving on, we talked about the Oscars at the beginning of our show, obviously, and we were trying to figure out what to do for this special segment. And we thought, well, let's talk about Oscar winners, but not this year's Oscar winners. Let's reevaluate a big Oscar winner from the past. This is our first ever FWOSCAR reevaluation, where we're going to discuss an awards winner that either neither of us have seen or we haven't seen in a long time. And we're going to talk about what value these awards actually have. We're going to talk about the legacy of the film versus the award itself, hopefully. And Pat, what are we watching for our inaugural edition?
Ordinary People, Robert Redford's directorial Oscar-winning film for Best Picture and Best Director. Well, other awards as well.
Yes, and that film is about a family death that kind of causes this turmoil in a family. And let's play a little bit of the trailer.
In this typical town, in this comfortable home, 3 ordinary people are about to live an extraordinary story.
It's starting all over again. The lying, the covering up, the disappearing for hours. I will not stand for it. I can't stand it. I really can't.
What kind of psychiatrist are you? They all believe in dreams.
I do believe in dreams. Only sometimes I want to know what's happening when you're awake.
I don't want to see any doctors or counselors. This is my family. And if we have problems, then we will solve those problems in the privacy of our own home.
I knew something was wrong even before he tried to kill himself.
I think it is a very private matter.
You never came to the hospital. How do you know about the hospital?
Your mother did come to the hospital, Conrad, and you know that.
I just don't know how to deal with it anymore.
Why are you hassling me, huh? Why are you trying to make me mad?
Are you mad?
No!
When this film came out, it was 1980. I was -3 years old.
I was -2.
-2.
My charm for Robert Redford was very, very much high.
Yeah, and he's not an actor in this film. Instead, it stars Donald Sutherland, Mary Tyler Moore, Judd Hirsch. In fact,
Timothy Hutton.
Timothy Hutton in his breakthrough role. He actually won Best Supporting Actor. Redford won Best Director. The film won Best Picture. It won Best Adapted Screenplay. Alvin Sargent won. Judd Hirsch, who I know from Taxi, is in the film, and he was nominated for Supporting Actor, lost to Hutton. And Mary Tyler Moore was nominated for Best Actress. Sutherland shot out. I thought he was one of the better parts of the film, which we'll probably get into later, I'm sure. And what it beat this year. I mean, I don't know. Pat, do you have the list in front of you? I do if you don't.
Well, yeah, for Best Picture, there was Coal Miner's Daughter, The Elephant Man, Raging Bull, and Tess. And for maybe the bigger, deal, director, there was David Lynch lost for Elephant Man, Roman Polanski lost for Tess, Richard Rush lost for The Stuntman, and Martin Scorsese, Hollywood's favorite, lost for Raging Bull.
Now, today I would say if anyone talks about Ordinary People, it's typically about how it beat Scorsese and Raging Bull in the director and picture categories. Would you disagree with that, Pat?
No, I would agree and add that people like to talk about how dated this movie is in compared to that film. Not something that I might comment on in a bit, but
yeah. So knowing what my knowledge of the film was going into watching it, and I hadn't seen this film before. I just expected, well, kind of what it is. It is a small drama, inoffensive, I would say, that beat one of the best films of all time at the Academy Awards. Raging Bull, I would say, one of the better films of all time.
Oh, okay.
Would you not? Are you disagreeing about Raging Bull?
I am disagreeing. I think this is the right pick.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So you think the Academy got it right? Actually, I don't even. It's not that I just like Raging Bull better than Ordinary People, which maybe we'll get into. I also think The Elephant Man is a supremely underrated film.
Oh, I think that's a great film as well. Which I haven't seen that in forever. It's not like I could watch all 5 of these pictures.
No,
but,
I thought about trying it, but I did not.
Similar in concept to our discussion of Amour and my thought of like just how stripped down the narrative is and what you're seeing and how it's more than just the film and the characters in it. I think that Ordinary People plays on the same level. And actually just watching Raging Bull a few months ago and not mentioning it on here, I don't know why, but it's I just don't think that movie is as great as many people say. It's a masterpiece. I just have a problem with a good amount of Scorsese pictures just in general.
It's been a long time since I've seen Raging Bull, and I probably should have revisited it knowing we were doing this segment. But I think why Raging Bull is important is more about the technical achievement, the amount, like the editing techniques used in it, and the method performance by De Niro, who rightfully, I believe, did win Best Actor that year. I don't have that fact.
He did win, yes.
Okay, good. So I think that's why that's remembered as being the film it is, and that's why it is in my memory. Just those fight sequences stand out for being influential for film, years to come. As far as how to do a realistic fight scene and the sound design and choosing to shoot in black and white, which The Elephant Man is also in black and white. So that's a weird choice in 1980. They decided to go with the black and white films, but I don't know. What did you? So you did not find it to be dated at all? That's a criticism I didn't know of.
Well, yeah. Well, a lot of people think that the story's dated, and the whole issue about being able to talk about somebody who's in psychotherapy or therapy in general is, that used to be a very big deal, whereas now it's kind of like everybody's out in the open about it. Hey, yeah, I've got a therapist. I gotta go check it out. But I think I don't like to talk about movies in terms of awards unless it's through the prism of the award that they won. But it's kind of like this movie, Raging Bull, is like one of the all-time 3 snubs in terms of popular opinion, probably behind, it's a toss-up between Citizen Kane and 2001 Space Odyssey, about the 3 movies that should have won and, they should burn down the Academy because of it. But I really just feel that having watched Raging Bull recently, that I don't really care for the pace or the story, the way that the film is brought up, and you almost don't really care at all about Jake LaMotta at any point in the movie. And he's definitely an anti-hero, but from the beginning, you don't know any of his motivations other than this guy. If you don't know who he is, he's a real life person, and he was considered one of the greatest in boxing, but they don't tell you anything about that. That's nothing new. That's something that Scorsese does in many of his films, where he just gets right to it.
Interesting. Well, having seen it, again, I haven't seen Raging Bull in a long time, and with fresh eyes, looking at Ordinary People, and only hearing that, oh man, this is I can't believe this film beat Raging Bull or The Elephant Man. I actually did think it was a pretty good film, and the benefit of it being an Oscar winner is I would have never probably sought out this film if it hadn't won Best Picture. That's
absolutely true, and losing to Raging Bull as well. You know, that the people are like, I got to see that movie.
And the interesting thing is, it is a small film that they don't. I mean, a film like that made today, I could not conceive of it winning Best Picture because they just don't make a film of that scale. Well, they do, and they win Independent Spirit Awards. It's kind of like the equivalent I can draw, from this year's nominees. It's probably the closest to Silver Linings Playbook and anything. I saw a lot of parallels to Amour too. It's not nearly as stark, but. It is about death, and we were introduced to the main couple in a theater, so that was just a superficial comparison I made. But it would be like if Silver Linings Playbook, I think, won this year. It would have been that kind of upset because it's a kind of a small story, a personal story with great performances, and that was enough to win Robert Redford the Oscar because he got those performances from those actors.
It's interesting because I think this movie might be held in higher acclaim had it not won the award or not been up against Raging Bull. Because just thinking about another movie that's dealing with a similar storyline, being Stand By Me, where somebody dies and then there's all this fallout in the family, and one of the surviving child is affected. Or I mentioned it earlier, but Kramer versus Kramer, which is very much a extremely stripped down movie that. When you hear about those coming out in Hollywood now, it's generally a play film, or where it's set on a stage basically, and I think part of the reason that Raging Bull might be so high in acclaim, at least in public opinion, by the general people who see films, maybe not critics or things or anybody like that, is it's a gangster movie and it's a boxing film, and it's stylized with black and white, whereas Ordinary People is. Suburban white people with maybe not white problems, but just problems in
They're
general.
well off,
there's nothing sexy about it. Whereas the story of Jake LaMotta could be at a certain level seen. It's definitely stylized with the slow motion boxing, and when he's fighting Sugar Ray, there's that great push in where he's just pretty much given up the fight. But it's interesting how things play out as far as their genre being able to make them popular down the line, because independent films generally, if they're of a subject matter that's not action oriented in any way. I mean, there's no action in this film except for maybe a couple flashbacks and a fight here or there, but they're not going to hold the public's interest in 30 years, as it is 33 years later now.
What this film reminded me of, and you can let me know if you think this is a true phenomenon or not. Once a film starts being lavished with praise, think Argo this year, a backlash starts to form, and you really begin to wonder, is that really the best picture of the year? Or that just seems like a safe bet. Like, that was happening to me watching all the nominees last year. I was like, I liked that film, but now that it's up there and being talked about like so much and so highly, I'm starting to cool on it a little bit. It's not cool to be recognized.
Yeah.
And so Ordinary People lost its cool. It could have been, I think it is an influential film. You see a lot of films since about, grieving and psychiatry. Do you think that's a real thing?
No, absolutely. I completely agree, because just looking at that and looking at, say, Avatar, which I don't really think is that great a piece of, movie making outside of what you visually see. But that happened to Avatar, that happened to Juno, and you've obviously heard it this year. That happened to Slumdog Millionaire. That's happening to Argo, where people are saying, yeah, it's good, but isn't it kind of slight? But there was an interesting point when they won the Screenplay Award, where he was talking about nonviolence. And I was like, through the prism of nonviolence, it might actually be quite an interesting discussion. But you're right. Over time, people like to, they build you up and then they break you down.
So that's kind of the blessing and the curse of winning Best Picture. You lose your cool, but you are in the almanac. Well, you show up in bold on Wikipedia.
Well, the thing that's funny about this is, as we're talking about this year's and how political the Oscars can be in campaigning, neither of us being alive in 1980, do you know anything about, was there a giant swell of people praising this film and trying to push it to win over Raging Bull? I mean, obviously, Beasts of the Southern Wild, they didn't campaign at all. They didn't have the money for it. But Silver Linings Playbook, that campaigned really hard. Lincoln campaigned really hard. Argo campaigned really hard. Those are movies that wanted the statue. The Weinsteins will always fight for the statue. Do we know anything about the 1980 race?
I did some Googling and I didn't come up with anything. That was as far as my research went. But you said the big name. You said Weinstein. And this was this is pre-Weinstein era. So I think there probably were politics going on. I mean, I think it probably won because Robert Redford was so well liked at the time and probably the biggest star in Hollywood at that point. And the fact that with his debut picture he had such a fine film, maybe it's, but who knows? Who knows? I don't. Did you come up with anything?
No, I couldn't find anything at all. That's the problem of why didn't they have the internet in the 80s and 70s?
Very well. Awards aside, should people check out Ordinary People on Netflix? I would say yes, if you're a fan of psychiatry dramas or Timothy Hutton.
Yes, it's kind of like Good Will Hunting, but with parents.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I don't think when I hear about this film, the other thing I hear about is Mary Tyler Moore's performance. Not as crazy about that, but I think Timothy Hutton well deserved the award. If De Niro wasn't up for, and De Niro and, the Elephant Man and everything, I think it's the best I've seen Donald Sutherland. That's my point.
Yeah, and Timothy Hutton almost seems like a better version of our namesake, Rebel Without a Cause. He's not a knife fighter or a car racer, but he's a kid with issues, and he doesn't feel like he can talk to anyone. Well, maybe in 12 months we'll talk about another, Oscar battle. We talked about Ang Lee earlier. Who knows? Maybe if the scars have healed, we can talk about Brokeback Mountain versus Crash.
Oh, I have not seen Crash since that year it came out.
Every time I see Brokeback Mountain, I cry.
Oh, it's a good film. It's a good film. Well, there is more show to come, so you're not off the hook yet. Please keep listening. Do it for me. Do it for Pat.
Well, folks, even though the show is about over, we still want you to contact us. Tell us if you think that Jacob is right and I'm an idiot for backing Ordinary People, or he thinks Raging Bull is the masterpiece. There's several ways to get in touch with us. Filmcastwithoutacause.com. Go there first. And you'll find links to the Flock phone, which is 515-412-0737. Be brave. Get on there. Leave some audio for us to play in the show. Or, of course, if you want to go a more passive route, there's Twitter, FilmcastWOAC, or email, filmcastwoac@gmail.com. Jacob, we're kind of tossing a few beanie bags in the air to which movie we're going to see. What do you think?
I'm just relieved it's not February anymore. I think we're actually to the point where there's some films that might actually be promising coming out. March 1st, one of those films not being promising would be 21 and Over, which I've seen the trailer for now 3 times.
Is this from the same people who did Project X?
It looks very Project X-y. They did say it's from the writers of The Hangover, which I think that's also how they promoted Project X. I don't care enough to look it up. I don't care.
All right, then we're not seeing that. Let's move on.
We're not reviewing 21 and Over. A film that was actually, I think, was supposed to come out last summer and then got delayed. Jack the Giant Slayer, the latest from Bryan Singer. Also coming out, The Last Exorcism Part 2. Pat, you and I had to review The Last Exorcism for our last job.
Yes, and I was a fan of it. I thought it was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, as a found footage film, it was pretty good, and it had a really good lead character. It was this priest who really didn't believe. He was more of a con man or whatever. The original is on Netflix Instant, so people maybe check that out before Part 2. With Part 2, though, it seems like they're totally abandoning the found footage thing.
Yeah, I think they're just
a movie.
Yeah, they're following the girl from the first film, and she's. I thought in the first film I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but her character seems to be completely different as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does intrigue me, but it also completely switching approaches like that kind of has a Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows feel to it.
I don't know if it looks that bad. No.
It doesn't look that. It actually looks pretty promising, but I don't know if we're going to be reviewing that yet. We're still debating. Also coming out, but we don't know how wide and how wide the release is going to be. Stoker, the English language debut of Chan-wook Park, or Park Chan-wook, depending on how you say your Asian names, the director who brought us Old Boy and Thirst and Lady Vengeance. I'm looking forward to that film as well, but we don't know where it's coming. We're leaning towards Jack the Giant Slayer. Pat, you're not a big Bryan Singer fan, though?
No, not necessarily, but I am very appreciative for at least bringing us serviceable superheroes, above average superhero movies with X-Men and X-Men 2. So,
and you love giants.
Yes, I am a huge fan of giants, even though I haven't seen The Iron Giant yet. So
what?
I know you
gosh.
brought it up earlier in our Flockology, but I'm still behind. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna cry.
There was something amazing I wanted to say because Ewan McGregor, he's in this movie, right? And he's either a supporting character or a main character, but he has said something that kind of makes me change my mind on Star Trek side movies and following somebody. He said if they're going to do a standalone film, like a standalone film from the characters of the original movies, that he thinks they should do a Ben Kenobi movie between the original 3 and the prequel 3. So you can figure out where he was between, his like late 30s and 60s, and see him in the desert, and maybe they could have something about like the hidden Jedis or something. And I thought that sounded like a brilliant idea.
McGregor is easily the best part of those prequel movies.
Without a doubt.
So I'd buy 3 tickets for that, just so I didn't have to have anyone sit next to me. No, that's it. I don't know. It's the end of the show, man. I'm tired.
I'm sorry.
So, but I think that's a great idea. But for Filmcast Without a Cause, I'm Jacob.
And I'm Pat.
Thank you for listening.
That's a wrap.
I'm finished.